So it's been a few days since Stone Free's release, and by now you've probably heard every opinion under the sun about the new stand that was added to YBA. There's people on one side saying that Stone Free is hot garbage, every move is cancelable, every move is blockable, why would anyone actively use this stand? And then there's people on the opposite extreme. Stone Free is overpowered, it does way too much damage, it has too many cutscenes, yada yada yada. So where do I fall on that spectrum? Well, more so a little bit in between. So far from what I used of Stone Free, I think that the stand is extremely solid. Dare I say, well balanced. And I know, my track record of saying things are balanced hasn't exactly gone over well in the past.
Hello there.
But the past is in the past. I, honest to God, this time around, think that the stand is pretty well balanced. Yes, literally every single move in your kit is cancelable, and yes, most of them are blockable. But despite that, I think Stone Free is still able to hold its own weight with a lot of powerful tools. I would say it's almost a jack of all trades, master of none. It has so many moves that can do so many different things, but none of them are outright really, really strong. And so while a lot of other stands directly rely on one or two specific moves in order to carry it through, Stone Free really needs to use all of its moves, and it has a lot of them. With all that being said though, I don't want to waste any more of your time, so let's jump over to the moveset and we'll talk about exactly what Stone Free is capable of. Starting off where we normally do with the M1s and base destructive power, Stone Free sits up there with the World, Star Platinum, and King Crimson with a fairly high base destructive power and fast speed stand M1s. As for moves, we'll start off with the least effective move in my opinion, which is String Bandage. String Bandage is probably the worst heal in the game. When fully upgraded, it's only going to heal you for 25 damage. It also has a fairly long startup animation and a solid amount of end leg after you actually finish the move. Plus, with how expensive Stone Free is, it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of points upgrading the healing only to get 25 extra HP sometimes out of it. I won't speak much more on this because you should probably just stay away from it. Our next move is a bit of an anomaly, and that's Aura Kicks. I say it's an anomaly because it doesn't act like any of the other kick barrages in the game, which in this case is a pretty bad thing. Aura Kicks, after a very short startup, deals 35 damage with a block-breaking hit at the end of the move. The weird thing about Aura Kicks is that it's cancelable on startup. I don't know why. As far as I know, none of the other kick barrages are like this unless they've changed it. And with how short the windup actually is for Aura Kicks, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people didn't even know this was canceled and just thought their move was bugging when they used it sometimes and the animation played out but nothing happened. The other weird thing is that you can still parry the first hit of the move, which would be perfectly fine if you couldn't also cancel the move. Like I said, it's weird. Regardless, most of the time, Aura Kicks can be used while in close proximity with the enemy to get 35 free damage and a knockdown hit. It's overall an extremely good move when it doesn't randomly get canceled. Next on the list of moves with weird mechanics, and we move over to String Lasso. String Lasso is a multi-purpose move that can be both used in combat and as a mobility tool. When used in combat, String Lasso is a pretty cumbersome, cancelable, blockable move with a solid amount of windup. If you do manage to connect the move, it'll do 19.3 damage as well as stunning your opponent for a brief moment. The aiming for having the move actually hit your opponent can be pretty wonky though, and sometimes it'll just choose not to hit even if someone's right in front of you. That being said, if you're at the mid-range and you use the move and your opponent blocks the move, you won't be punished. It'll simply act as if you were trying to use it as a mobility move and pull you towards the opponent and shoot you up in the sky. Speaking of mobility, if you point String Lasso at a surface and use the move, you'll grapple onto it and fling yourself on top of whatever you were pointing at. It's great for getting on top of high buildings, especially in the new map, and is a decent combo starter if you catch your opponent sleeping. Continuing the trend of weird moves, let's move over to String Pilot. String Pilot, after a somewhat short cancelable windup, will shoot your stand towards the nearest player, dealing 28.9 damage if all the hits connect, and stun them for probably longer than it should. The windup is pretty noticeable though, and the move is blockable. The reason that String Pilot is weird is the way that you aim it. At first glance, it seems like you should just point it towards the enemy, and if they're close enough, then it'll go towards them. But how it actually works is that it's a 360-degree aimbot around your character for however much you've upgraded the range for. Meaning even if you're facing directly backwards, it'll still go towards the nearest target. Now that being said, the real risk here is if you're not in range of that aimbot and you use the move. If you miss String Pilot, you're locked in the animation the entire time. And the animation is not short. This means that your enemy can just walk up to you and use literally any move in the game, and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you're gonna use String Pilot, make damn sure you're in range. The last thing I have to note on the move is the fact that it can actually hit grounded opponents, although it doesn't do any damage. What I mean by that is it'll track your opponents while they're still on the ground and hit them when they stand up. This is only going to catch people once or twice while they're not paying attention, but it can work and can get you a lot of damage on the 1 or 2 times that you manage to pull it off. The next move that we're going to talk about is String Barrier, which is hands down the best move that Stone Free has access to, and nothing else on the roster really comes close. In essence, String Barrier is basically Vampire's Freeze Punch, but it's put on a stand. After a short, cancelable windup, String Barrier will deal 19.3 damage to your opponent and stun them in place with strings for a decent amount of time. While in the barrier, your opponent is stunned, but they're still capable of blocking. The best thing about String Barrier, though, is that unlike basically every single other move that Stone Free has, this move is not blockable. Not only is it not blockable, but it's a true block break that's unparryable. Basically, String Barrier is a win no matter what. You can use it after winning an M1 trade in a situation where you would normally use your spec knockdown, and then you either block break them or stun them. If you block break, you can combo, and if you stun them, then you can go for a few M1s, and then they try to block, and then use your spec block break. If that block breaks, combo. If it doesn't, free damage. You win no matter what the interaction. Overall, it's just really, really good. Our last move before we talk about the cutscene moves is String Slam. String Slam is probably the most simple move in the entirety of Stone Free's moveset, but it still has some odd mechanics that set it apart from everything else in the game. After a windup that's similar, if not identical, to the beatdowns in the game, String Slam will pick up the opponent and slam them on the ground, dealing 40.2 damage. Despite the long windup, the move is still cancelable during the startup, and not only that, but it's a blockable move. Usually moves like these are either block breaks or block bypasses that can be parried. This is not one of those, as the only interaction it has with block is being blocked. That being said, the move stand crashes and it knocks down the opponent for a decent amount of time, so if you did decide to get String Bandage, you could use it after landing this move and it's pretty much guaranteed. It's also a pretty good move to pair with String Pilot to try to catch people while they're standing up from it. Finally nearing the end, and we can talk about the cutscene moves. Stone Free has 2 cutscene moves, the first of which being Home Run. Home Run is a projectile where you take out a baseball and you chuck it at your opponent. If the initial hit lands, it plays out the cutscene and deals 42.9 damage. The catch is there's an extremely obvious sound cue when the baseball is about to be thrown, and the move is entirely blockable. But for a projectile that deals over 40 damage, I think that probably makes sense. An interesting note about Home Run is that if you use the String Pilot and you're too far away to get any sort of real confirms, you can throw the baseball at them, and as long as you're close enough, it'll be a true confirm. That's over 70 damage for free off of throwing out one move, assuming all the hits connect. And the final move that we have to talk about is the String Beatdown. String Beatdown has all of the same mechanics that the current beatdowns in the game have. It's got a lot of startup, the startup can be canceled, it's a block bypass, but you can parry the move. The thing about beatdowns is that they were changed during this update. Beatdowns now have varying amounts of damage depending on how much HP is missing on the opponent. That being said, the String Beatdown deals 42.3 damage base versus an opponent with full HP. That's more damage than every single one of your moves except for Home Run, and that's only by like 0.6 damage. What that basically means is if you've done any amount of damage to your opponent past the start of the match and you get a block break or a good chance to use the beatdown, it's probably better to use that than to use another move. In terms of how the mechanics for this work, the beatdown does a set amount of damage all the way up until the final hit of it, where it does a varying amount of damage. And really, it's kind of up to you whether you want to use the beatdown early or wait until you think you have a better chance to use it and do more damage. If you were asking me though, I'd say use it relatively early just so you can use it more often during the fight. And finally, 10 minutes into the damn video, I've finished up talking about all of Stonefree's ridiculous amount of moves. That means we can move over to the strategies, and I can tell you what you should be doing while using Stonefree to get the best results. When it comes to strategies, I'm going to start things off by just showing off a few combos that I've labbed out so that you have a general idea of things you can go for while you're playing. Nearly all of these combos aren't true because, well, it's YBA, but they will work against most players in the game since most people are garbage, and even against some people that aren't so garbage but just aren't paying too much attention. The main thing that can be kind of difficult with Stonefree is to continuously keep track of the cooldown on all of your moves to make sure that you're actually using them all when they're available. Stonefree has a ton of moves, 8 unique ones to be exact. And if you're not using all 8 moves, then you're not using the stand to its highest potential. And all 8 of the moves, aside from maybe String Bandage, have some sort of use that you can be using in pretty much any matchup realistically. And really, I think what it comes down to right now, the reason that a lot of people are struggling with Stonefree is they're just not used to having to keep track of so many moves. If you're specifically fishing for one combo with one move, and then all the while you're just letting your other moves sit there, then they're not doing anything for you if they're not on cooldown and they're not being used. The thing is, Stonefree's cooldowns, most of them are fairly long. But those long cooldowns don't matter as much as long as you're using them when they're available in times that are applicable. If I'm gonna be honest with you, Stonefree in this regard is one of the harder stands to play in the game, which is kind of weird because at the end of the day, the reward you get for actually mastering it doesn't seem that high. Not necessarily a good or a bad thing, just something to keep note of. Anyways, I said most of these things earlier, but I'll just do a quick reiteration. If you hit an M1 and you get the chance to use String Barrier, it's a win no matter what you do. String Pilot has a ton of stun, so if you decide to use that move and it does land, you have a lot of options, especially if you're close to the opponent. And the beatdown will usually do more damage than a lot of your combo finishers if you've done any amount of damage to your opponent so far. Overall though, I think the best thing to do with Stonefree is to bide your time, play careful, and don't let people rush you down too much. Because quite literally every single move you have is cancelable, you need to be careful since you don't have any moves to alleviate pressure. If you start getting messed up, there's nothing to bail you out. But if you do manage to get into that advantage state and start dishing out damage, if you know what you're doing, you can really put the hurt on. I don't think there's really a whole lot else that I can really say here. Keep track of your cooldowns, use them when you can, do optimal punishes off of block breaks, and use the beatdown early. Short, sweet, to the point, let's move to Counterplay. In terms of Counterplay, I'm going to tell you the exact opposite of what I just said in strategies, which I think makes perfect sense. If you want to beat Stonefree, you gotta have a stand that can put out a lot of pain quickly and just run them down. If you're M1ing on Stonefree, there's basically nothing they can do. Every single move they have aside from Kick Barrage has some substantial startup that can be canceled if you hit them with anything. And so once they've either burned through their Kick Barrage or you've canceled it, there's not a whole lot they can do. And because String Lasso is also cancelable, it's not like they can really get away either. The other thing that you really need to be doing is not getting block broken whenever possible, which can be a bit of a struggle because of Stonefree's great options for block breaking. I'm of course talking about String Barrier. It's much better to get hit by String Barrier than it is to get block broken by String Barrier. That's just kind of the way it is. And if you do get hit by String Barrier, it can be a little bit hard to see at times, but you need to be paying attention to the sound cues so that you know when they're potentially throwing out a beatdown, and then you can barrage to cancel it. That, or try to perfect block it. your call. Overall, fighting against Stone Free should not be that hard. It's a pretty honest stand, it doesn't have too many standout really good options, and as long as you know what the moves are, you realistically shouldn't struggle too hard with fighting it. Just run at them, don't think too hard, and cancel everything they have. That's that, let's move over to the conclusion. In conclusion, I think that Stone Free is probably going to stand the test of time here. Obviously, past the first few weeks, we're going to see a serious sharp decline in the amount of people using this stand because it's not going to be meta. I might just completely eat my words here, but from the looks of it, it's just not going to be a meta stand. That being said, you don't necessarily have to have a stand be meta for people to be running it, despite what some of the people in the YBA community might tell you. Not only that, but a stand doesn't have to be really strong to still be fun to play. I haven't gotten too many chances to play the world this patch, but in previous patches before they buffed it up, it was still a lot of fun to play, even if it was just objectively inferior to the world AU. Meta speaking, the world AU is the world but better in pretty much every single way. But that didn't stop me and many other people from still playing the world fairly frequently because it's fun to play and we like the stand. And so in terms of Stone Free, even if it isn't the best stand in the game, I think it's good enough that people who like Stone Free are gonna be able to play it. It's not gonna be a Tuskak 4 situation where there's a lot of people who like the stand but shy away because it either just doesn't work or just isn't very good. As for me, honestly, I'm not sure how much Stone Free I'm gonna play. I've only watched the anime, I've not read the manga, so I'm not a big fan of Stone Free or anything, but I'm also not a detractor by any means. But Stone Free doesn't hold a place in my heart like the world is, so I'm not gonna go out of my way to play it unless there's some new tech discovered or something that makes it seem a lot better than it currently is. I'm sure I'll see myself playing it every once in a while, and it'll be a nice thing to add to the random wheels for all of my different challenges, but I think for the foreseeable future, I don't see myself using this stand too often. In terms of other stands that were buffed or changed during this update, I may have a series that's really lazy that comes out, where I just go in with the new buffed or nerfed stands and talk about my thoughts on the changes while also playing with the changes. So if you're a fan of my low-effort, live commentary style videos, then you can expect some of those coming fairly soon. The other problem is that I've also got a fair few videos that are now pretty outdated from footage I recorded a while back that I just hadn't uploaded yet. So just for reference, a low-effort SBR video, the World Over Heaven bingo, and Builder Bus Tuskak 4 Pluck will all be coming, as well as another video that I don't want to reveal just yet. And all of those will have gameplay from pre-patch, but really, I don't think that's going to matter too much, and I don't have any plans of scrapping the videos or anything. With that though, we're not even talking about Stone Free, so I'm done here. If you enjoyed the videos, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't do those things. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.